I want to bring in another topic here that I'd like to get your insight on, and it's really how the religious right echo chamber. There's a really prolific echo chamber on that side of the equation, with not just the religious side of conservatism, but just conservatism in general. They have a fascinating funnel that goes all the way from the top of Fox News all the way down to thousands of small channels that promote particular messaging that facilitates a political agenda, to be sure. I want to talk specifically about a radical right-wing commentator by the name of Josh Bernstein, who declares that the Democratic Party is not a legitimate party, but is actually a terrorist organization, and that there is no different. They are no different than ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, and the Nazis, and says that these people are purebred evil, satanic communists. There's a lot there to unpack. Let's listen to this demagoguery.
You're not a legitimate party. You're a terrorist organization. That's what the Democrats are. And I've said it numerous times. I'll say it on this live stream. I'll say it 100,000 more times in the future. The Democrats are a terrorist organization. They are no different than ISIS. They are no different than Al-Qaeda. They are no different than Boko Haram. They are no different than Hamas. They are no different than Hezbollah. They are no different than North Korea. They are no different than the old Nazis. They are no different than the communists, because that's what they are. They're no different than the CCP. These people are purebred evil satanic communists, and they want to rule over us, and it's not going to happen. It is never going to happen.
You know, Pastor Galloway, you know, we're talking about the Democratic Party who wants 3.5 trillion in infrastructure spending versus 2 trillion in infrastructure spending. I'm not sure I'm getting the logical leap to fascism.
And I have quite a few friends who are part of the GOP locally here in Minnesota, and they actually showed me this first before I saw us coming to somebody here, and they wanted to make sure that I knew that that they weren't on this track, and there's a real big head rubbing and just kind of like that sigh when somebody in your family does something real out of pocket, and you're just like, oh. But I want to call attention to notice the fact that he this repetitive statement, and this is the theme that I want to pull out for folks, right? They are this, they are that, they are this. Very little, not very little. There is no like, and because of X, Y, and Z, because the argument doesn't hold weight or water when you actually start getting into what is the basis for your argument, right? You can try to infer something. So when he started talking about they want to rule over you, that lines up a little bit with some of the angst or anxiety around, you know, size of government, which, you know, is a legitimate debate, right? We've left that, unfortunately, a long time ago because we've left logic in actual political, you know, discourse a long time ago. So, you know, it's a problem. There's also this whistle under here, right? I'm not just saying this to try to make it stand out and make a point, right? I'm trying to give talking points for the fervor, right? And let's think about this. If I want to, as some of the groups that he was referencing, radicalize or take the extremist approach to something, what do I got to do? I have to isolate you. I have to control kind of where you're getting your information and get you thinking a certain particular way. And then I've got to make sure that you continue to have reinforcing talking points that back up this thing that radicalizes you into something that's extreme. And often it's done by looking at the logical thing and saying that is all the evil things that I'm actually demonstrating and actually trying to get you to go along with. And so there's a particular piece of concern, particularly for the young folks in the community that I serve. They are susceptible to this kind of rhetoric. I don't need to worry about logic because all I have to do is keep repeating what this person is saying. And it is a tactic that we have seen before, and we've seen it in a radicalization of actual terrorist groups. And so I think it's really interesting to see that play out in just his language.
It's rare. It's a rarest of occasion that I don't think I've ever had something to follow up as a pushback. The only pushback I have for you is this is an actual terrorist group, right? And from my best estimation, if you look at what this is like the clarion call for terrorist organizations, the folks who went up the steps on January 6th, the Proud Boys who are out in the streets, right? And I often wonder, and it's not so much as to point out that distinction, but I often wonder how many people don't realize that, there's a full-blown right-wing revolution happening around us. I mean, they've got their prophets, they've got their, they've got their foot soldiers, they've got their political prisoners now who are being, accosted by the FBI and treated poorly. I mean, they've got an entire infrastructure over there that, in their minds, they wake up and they listen to this type of stuff. They wake up and they honestly feel like they're in a full-blown right-wing revolution.
Well, there's some really important scholars, and point well taken, right? Look at the fruits of what comes out of that. Some of the same exact words that he was using were used by the folks in the B-roll footage of the people that were gathered there on January 6th. So that's right. That point is well taken. Looking at the fruit of their labor. One of the things that comes out, Howard Takaki, who's a scholar who wrote a book called A Different Mirror, but Edward Bonilla Silva's Racism Without Racists, both of those books specifically, just because I've read them recently, talk about this pattern of when playing fields begin to level, or I'm forced to compete without the advantage, the racialized advantage that I may have had in the past as much, that has been used historically to sail into this fear. Right. Some people call it the Browning theory. If you just look at a market space, there's the stomach for this kind of destructive rhetoric is going away. The market is changing on folks, and I can either grow and try to be more competitive in that market, or I can try to examine the fear of loss. We saw this very same thing play out in the Civil War, because there needed to be this galvanizing of the South. Folks don't often talk about that. It wasn't, the South had to galvanize many folks who at one point saw that this slavery system was actually depressing poor white folks in the South economically. So they had to figure out a way to stoke some fears in order to get folks to come on board, to have the coalition that needed to be there. We don't often talk about that.